We are 2:30. We are talking about simulated realities. The word in itself is a paradox. We are talking about simulation and realities. So I'll talk about the article first and how it puts the context of our discussion. We are talking about in article the author talks about the boxing sparring. Actually, sparring is something that a boxer used for training purpose. That it's not scored. There are two boxers. They are fighting. It's as close as it gets to the real boxing match, but it's not the real boxing match because it's not scored and it's for the training purpose. The second thing he talks about is the artificial intelligence and what scientists do to for experiment purpose. They hypothesize and try to check their hypothesis by applying different models to it. So he's saying that both of these things are doing the same, and how it is linked. It's the whole idea is about. It's talking about that any simulation has 3 dimensions, and the simulation can be classified on this basis. But what exactly simulation does? It abstracts the reality. It creates the indexed reality and we can see what are the outcomes in different contexts. Basically, both of them try to predict future. The modality part of it is about the interface. That how the interface of the simulation is. Is it more physical, as in the case of boxing match, or it's more virtual, as in the case of artificial intelligence? The referential frame means the purpose, and for what purpose the simulation is being modeled. Pre-enactment means that it is the purpose of the simulation is for the training, and self-referential is something that the simulation itself is end in itself. As in the entertainment industry, that you want that kind of experience, that you are experiencing that, and you don't want to want anything else from it. It's just about the experience. So that is self-referential. Perceived reality is how real you feel when you are in the simulation, and it happens that this reality and non-reality can become blurred. As in case of a boxing match, what happens is if two boxers are sparring, it may happen that one boxer hits the another with a brute force, and then the other boxer retaliates, and then it becomes the role of how the coach moderates the fight so that it doesn't become the real fight, even though it is not scored. And when we are talking about non-real, it becomes difficult for virtual simulation on these axes. There are limitations of virtual simulation, that how real or non-real it can become. So now we know what are the 3 dimensions.
One thing I like about is on the third point, which is perceived reality, how real or non-real it is. It should be pointed out that this is something which is very subjective. Not only from the people who are involved in the simulation, but even as someone who's, say we are watching it from outside, it will be very different for us how real or non-real it feels as compared to the people. And this is something that will tie on into our discussion later on.
Yeah. So what simulation does? It abstracts the reality. This part of this aspect of simulation has been exploited from medieval times. From in arts, theatre artists have created simulations, if we make to as means to an end, so that they want to critique how the society works and how everything is going on. The example of Dante's Divine Comedy is the example of it. Then we have playwrights Charles Dickens in his novels. Then coming to most recent times, Ayn Rand, how she put forward her individualism. If you take example of Vijit and Girish Karnad. Vijay Tendulkar was a controversial figure in Indian theatre, he wrote the plays which were ahead of his time. He wrote in Gashiram Kotwal, he critiqued about the politics, how the politicians create the gundas and how they use it. So that was something he wrote in 1972, which was evident in Iraq, Iraq, how the Saddam Hussein was created. And same thing happened with the Al-Qaeda. I don't remember the name.
That is something which you rightly pointed out, that the fact that the narrative creates a kind of simulated reality for the observer, as my peer had spoken earlier, that it creates it not only for the players or the people who are actually within this reality, who are part of this reality, but also for the observers. And this is what we have been getting over to.
Right. And when we are talking about the contemporary cinema, we talked about Salman Khan cinema. They are just for the entertainment purpose, and they don't mean anything else. And we can say that it is for the end in itself. If we talk about the simulation terms.
So, one of the key figures who helped us to understand this concept has been the experience of the works that of Baudrillard, and how he actually explained to us the shift from means of production as or rather the exchange value becoming the central or the key theme, over to a symbolic value becoming the key theme within, and how exactly was it that we decided to develop this concept that it is the consumer that needs to have a particular story or a so-called banality which needs to be transformed into a romantic version, which needs to have this particular mode of consumption. Now, if you look at this point of aestheticization of the world, there was a shift from in the later part of this in the later part of the 20th century, that there was a progressive shift in the technology side. How with the entry of the internet, and there was a progressive distribution of information that took place. Now, what that actually produced was a very quick dispersal of information that goes about, and at the same point in time, what it actually led to was
I would like to add on the theatre part. It's a skill of the playwright to make that as real as possible, yet putting his original thought into it. Otherwise, what happens is people can't relate to it if it is not as real as it can get. And if we take an example of Devdas, in Devdi, how Anurag Kashyap depicted it in the more contemporary way, yet keeping the idea of Devdas still into it. So it's about how real but not real.
Also, at the same time, this simulative reality, again talking about playwrights, if you talk back to medieval times and places like Rome or something, a lot of these times, these plays or public performances were used as a means of sort of subliminal messaging in terms of just placing an idea into the people's head of how society works, of how hierarchy works, and what their place in society actually is. And what we see that is also carrying forward now. And now we'll move forward to an example of that in today's managerial context, and no bigger, more pervasive example of that than the entire, you can say, marketing and advertising industry as a whole. So how it essentially works is, there will be a product, there will be a service, whatever is being marketed. Through the advertisement or throughout the copy, whatever it is, they will simulate a reality to sort of attach certain values, certain characteristics to the product, which in many cases might entirely not be there. There might be one or two of those characteristics that you may tie back to the product, but which are actually not there in an attempt to actually make you want the product, to make you feel that that is a place which you can reach if you use that product or service, which actually is not existent. And how we do that is we just walk you through a couple of ads and see.
Essentially, if carrying Siddhanth's point forward, is the concept of attaching empty referentials into the form of at developing this romanticized version of reality, which is something which we will be better able to show through these advertisements.
Okay, so just to give some context as to how this ties back into a thing is basically, you see initially it starts off with a child who's discontent with whatever is happening at home. He's not happy with his family, whatever he's planning to move out. He says मैं घर छोड़ के जा रहा हूँ and all of that. And how he's eventually pulled back into his house is through dhara. So as to say, they're showing you can make things which essentially give you a sense of belonging, which is essentially give you a sense of safety or security within your household, and how basically a product as non-related to that as cooking oil can actually be used to symbolize things such as safety and security and connection to not only your family members but also giving you a sense of a home, so as to say.
Yes. So taking this point forward, what you have is over here is a complete shift from the means of production or the primarily stepping up of the production and the generation of the copies over to a shift towards the focus of the discourse was primarily into how the consumption or how the consumer should actually be incentivized to have a much higher consumption level by associating it with your childhood memories, with the cultural impact of this particular advertisement, that you have your whole family system, your old servant who has been along with you for generations, the trusted servant. This is what it is primarily about.
Okay. Moving on to the next slide.
कुछ लोग कहते हैं कि मेरी आवाज में कशिश है। मेरी मामा की आवाज भी बिल्कुल ऐसी ही है। कुछ कहते हैं कि मेरी आंखों में कोई बात है। इसका श्रेय भी मेरी मामा को ही जाता है। और सब कहते हैं मेरा अपना इसके अलार्म, क्योंकि उन्होंने मुझे दिया है मार्को। वो कहती है मार्को ओरिजिनल नीम में है, 100% शुद्ध नीम ऑयल। इसका एंटीबैक्टीरियल एक्शन गहराई से साफ करे और आपको दे 100% क्लियर त्वचा नेचुरली। तो अगर आप लेंगे तो मैं कहूँगी थैंक यू मार्को।
Again, even in this ad, we see something as simple as soap. Firstly, they are selling the concept of beauty, and again, we've had this conversation many times during class of beauty and confidence being shown through fair skin and how you're very beautiful, you perceive to be very beautiful by the entire world, but not putting it in, for the lack of a better word, in crass terms like that. They've used the angle of mother and affection and how the connection between mother and daughter, and how a lot of things are passed on from mother to daughter, but so is apparently the secret to being successful and confident in the world around you is passed on in the form of a soap, which is again coming from your mother to your daughter.
In both the examples, what we see is we talked about the three dimensions: the real and non-real part. The user being Rani Mukherjee or the child in the first commercial, and the observer kind of puts himself or herself in that place, and kind of the empty referential become the symbol of in first place that childhood memories or the cooking oil. In second place, it becomes kind of the symbol for mother's love or her affection and the tradition itself, apart from the product.
And to finally just give you another example of this symbolism. Okay, so here again we see something as simple as just a carbonated soft drink being used to represent some. Firstly, you should see that this is the virtual kind of ads that comes to play. So even the virtual can be used as a powerful influencer, and also the fact that something as simple as a carbonated drink is being used to show that oh, you can put yourself in a place where there is nothing boring around you. Life is all happy, jolly, and nice and good, and everything is really exciting, and you can keep bouncing all around you.
Just by buying and drinking and consuming basically the Fanta, which may not happen, and sometimes you feel nauseated if you just drink it like that
too fast. And to think of how we actually end up believing in those things, but if you sit down and think about it, I don't think anyone frankly would have ever taken a bottle of Fanta and gone around jumping like that. I mean, that's not. So again, just how pointless, or how if we actually sit down and think about this, all these ads, how sort of, for the lack of a better word, stupid they end up turning out to be the value that they're putting forward. Nothing actually turns out the way they are, but they're playing on the fact that the customer puts himself into that reality, wants to attain that stage, and ends up buying the product or service.
Right, and consider the fact that you compare this with any of the other cola advertisements within its product category, and you will always end up having a copy of that whole concept, similar, that you have a good life, you are going to enjoy.
Coca-Cola plays on happiness, Thumbs Up plays on excitement, Mountain Dew plays on beating your fear and things like that. So all of them are playing on some or the other aspiration of, you can say, the consumer, or something that people always aspire to reach to. And
it's basically putting the symbiotic values, symbiotic meanings to the kind of simulations we make, and to the meanings we have, which are happiness and whatnot.
So now where exactly does this have this concept of a simulated reality lead to having a process gap, so to speak, or an analytical gap? You have all been explained that we are always will know exactly what is simulation and what is real, because it's always explained and it is always expected out of us that yes, we'll be able to feel it, touch it, know it. But seriously, do you really think that it will be that is it what it's all about? No. What concept of a simulation is that it is not only an abstraction of reality, it is also a boundary to reality. What you have through its very laws of that are encoded within this virtual world, you have a concept of exactly how what is acceptable, what is the boundary of something that can possibly be real. So I would like to begin with our concept of our framework of intended objective fulfillment analysis. What this tells us is that through technology and its various offerings that are progressively there, we might not be able to see through their correct or their exact intended purpose. So what we are having is, for example, you have this simulation of Second Life, which is primarily a secondary world on the virtual plane. And what you have is that it defines the boundaries of what is exactly possible. You have people who, on suppose for example social media sites, which are actually negating the need for human contact, and which actually go ahead and were supposed to be something means of bringing us together.
I mean, to take that one forward on social media, essentially if you think about it, if the day Facebook was sort of founded, one would have said that the point of Facebook was to bring people and communities closer, and to increase sort of human interaction to the point where it was not being facilitated by things like cell phones or whatever, email or whatever, and to bring people closer and to make communication easier. But what we see it's actually resulted in is exactly the opposite. I mean, there are instances where people, say, take the example of a gathering, say a social gathering, someone meets for a wedding or a party or whatever. Earlier it was more to meet the people and everything, but now it's turned more to a place where people are taking pictures not for the memories part of it, to keep memories, but to actually upload it on Facebook and show the world what they're actually doing. So it's come to a point where there's social, in fact their life on social media, which is actually a simulation of their actual life, has started coming before their actual presence in a place. We can go out to restaurants and see people eating dinner where they're not actually engaging in conversation, but they're actually just, everyone is within their smartphones, they're on messaging apps, they're talking to people who are not even there at that point. So essentially the technology offering as such is negating the entire sort of value proposition that it was initially founded for.
And taking this point forward, this whole concept of physical boundaryless connections, this whole global social network was supposed to endeavor to provide us human contact or human touch beyond our physical boundaries. And what it has actually ended up providing is a kind of a boundary which is more, so to speak, mental boundary of what is realistically possible, so to speak. I mean, think about it. None of you can actually have this concept that you'll have, go to one of these social media pages and have this already established concepts of what is socially acceptable, what is unacceptable, and you will not be able to be truly free through this.
So basically the boundaries between the real and unreal are getting blurred in this example, and the unreal is kind of replacing the real world, because the anti-referential being imparted on that particular product and through the consumption of that particular product.
Also, I mean, how not only is the virtual replacing the real, it is also, as Faizan said, I'll just give you an example of how it is determining what socially acceptable behavior is. One prime example would be people not putting up pictures of themselves, people putting up fake profiles and fake pictures, because that is what they think will be socially acceptable or will put them in a place where they don't think they are currently, but where they aspire to.